All right, so it's been, how long has it been since the last promotion we said?
2 years.
2 years. So 2 years, we've gone through an amount of pressure on a societal level, on an individual level, on a tribal level. A lot of people aren't comfortable talking about things like bravery, fear, courage, cowardice, betrayal, loyalty. Well, here's the thing. I'm somebody that as a teenager did not always do the right thing. And I wound up with, we could call temporary government housing for about 2 months when I was 16 years old, because the formulas that I had that were successful in one chapter of my life were no longer successful in the chapter that I found myself getting in trouble in. Over the years, certainly inspired by that little 2-month adventure, what I call my first trip to Valhalla, over the years I had to develop formulas to be able to deal with the stressors that I encountered in my life, because I wanted a better outcome than my existing formulas were providing. So now listen, there are a lot of people who fall on all parts of the spectrum when it comes to the pandemic, COVID, the lockdowns, the vaccines, and I'm not going to debate any of this with anybody right now, right? You have your opinion, and if it's my opinion, then you're right. But everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? What I want to talk about, though, is regardless of where you are on the spectrum, in any one of those areas, you went through some pressure. So right now, we're on the other side of that pressurized adventure that we've all been on. Everybody has lost something. Everybody has struggled in some way. Everybody's gone through a pressure that prior to this 2-year adventure, we might not have faced before. So my question is, to you, it's rhetorical, don't answer it out loud, is what formulas do you have now that you didn't have before? Or the formulas that you did have, how have they improved? Because here's the thing. If you face pressure, or every time you face pressure in your life, you become dysfunctional, then you are always going to be controlled by the person that could put pressure on you. If you do not know who you are, what you stand for, what your code happens to be, then how can you anchor yourself to any identity when pressure is trying to pull you in every direction? I remember 2 years ago when the government told me that we had to shut down the school. The easy question is, well, what are we going to do? My first response is, well, what are the options? Because that's where it starts. Any single time you are looking at the landscape of your life and you are going, this is unfair. How could this happen? Like, I'm the guy that's standing next to you going, okay, you done? You done? You done? Because at some point you got to do something. There are people during these last 2 years that became more dependent on security provided by others. There are people who took this as a reminder, an eye-opening experience, that maybe I'm too dependent on others to begin with. I know people who have changed careers. I know people who have changed location, who have moved. I know people who are looking at life completely differently because they didn't realize that they were living in a fragile glass aquarium. And as soon as a crack went into that wall, and that aquarium was no longer safe, they realized they only knew how to succeed in that aquarium. That was the limit of the formulas they had. Well, here we are, 2022, right? It's the current year. What formulas do you have for everything that you need to negotiate now, knowing what you know now? I had to relocate the headquarters of the Jungle Gym. When I was negotiating the lease for the new spot, for the first time that the landlord's lawyer said, the first time they had to negotiate, because of me and my lawyer, a COVID clause. that said, listen, if the government tells me I'm not allowed to run my business, I'm not on the hook for the rent. They had to put that in. Now, when I first got hit 2 years ago with them telling me to shut down, I was thinking, well, how the hell am I supposed to pay the rent? Obviously, I can't pay the rent. Well, would have been nice to have a COVID clause, right? Well, when I had to negotiate the next spot, that was a formula that had improved. Well, what has improved in your life? Just talking to AJ, got another job. Right? Why? Because he was tired of dealing with a situation that wasn't improving what he wanted to do with himself, with his life. That was too offset from who he wanted to be. It doesn't matter where your preference is. The whole thing is you want to be congruent. If I ask anybody, hey, are you a weak loser? I'm almost scared that somebody might say yeah, but I'm willing to bet that the majority of people say no. But I know for a fact that a significant number of people, depending on how many I ask, will be weak losers. They'll be weak because they have no strength. They'll be losers because they're running formulas that don't win. This isn't a pejorative insult, oh, you're a weak loser. No, weak and loser, like they're criteria in my book. If you are not getting stronger, then you better never be in an environment that's stronger than where you're at. I talk about in the Great Depression, there were people jumping off buildings because they lost money that reduced them to a level of income that the majority of the planet didn't have to begin with. They were so incapable of looking at a life without that money that they had at one point, maybe a couple of days prior, that they were jumping off of buildings. Yeah, some of the aquariums are fancy. Some of the aquariums are really fancy. But when it comes down to it, if you lose your job tomorrow, if you lose a loved one tomorrow, if you get injured tomorrow, if you get sick tomorrow, like what is your formula for dealing with it? And if you don't have one, then what winds up happening is you are reactive. You are emotional. And now that emotional version of you is the one navigating your life. You see, part of being an adult is that we have to have adult processes. Right? Those people who are the breadwinners in their family. Might be just the dad, might be just the mom, might be both. Both of my parents worked. Right? You guys know that no matter what goes on, at some point you're like, well, how am I going to get the rent? How am I going to get food for the kids? How am I going to get somebody to look after them when I'm at work? Like, all of that stuff that people want to argue about on the internet, that doesn't matter when it comes to the things that actually affect your life. All I'm saying is, hey, you could argue with strangers on the internet. You could sit there and debate your political, that's fine. But do the formulas that you have allow you to navigate the life that you're living? Whenever I see somebody that's weak, that is conflict averse, because sometimes you got to stand up for yourself. It's a nice idea right up until somebody tries to make you sit down. I stand up for my beliefs. Well, that's fine if people are giving you room to stand. How much are you going to be able to stand up for yourself when somebody's trying to push you down? That's the type of strength that you need to build. I don't care where you live, what kind of car you drive, how much money you have. None of that means anything to me. MC, I want to make enough money so I can buy a house on the beach. You can go to any third world coastal country, they got people living on the beach all day long. So just living on a beach doesn't necessarily mean something. That's just an application of something you want to aspire to be. And what people don't understand, that all starts inside. So all the virtue signaling, all of the, look at me, this is what I stand for, this is what I believe. Do whatever makes you comfortable. Just understand the limits in its value when compared to things you could be doing for yourself. COVID, you know what? You die when you're fat. We're talking about probability. If you're fat, bigger chance of dying. I don't care where you are on the masks and the lockdowns, but 2 years in, don't be fat. How come you don't have your mask on? How come you haven't lost 80 pounds? I got more data to back up my position than the other one. You can have all of the imaginary stuff you want. It's not right that he's doing this or she's doing that. That's fine. But just make sure you're doing the stuff that makes sense. Don't be telling people what to do. You're still overweight. Telling people how to live their lives and your lives in shambles. Criticizing the value of somebody's family and how they run their homes. When you could only wish you could have a home that runs as effectively as his. I don't care where you fall on the spectrum of power, of personal power. All I expect in order to be connected to you through Alliance is that that spectrum is a ladder and you have committed to climbing. People who don't climb, I don't have time for. And my life has gotten significantly more successful, significantly more powerful when I stopped giving time to people who want to be carried. Thank you guys for listening.